Hi guys, welcome to Algebra 1. Today's lesson is going to focus on factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient of 1. I know it's a mouthful. Now all that you know about adding and subtracting and multiplying positive and negative numbers are going to help you get through this lesson. You ready to get started? Let's go. Okay, so to explain to you what I mean by factoring, I first want to jump back to foiling, okay? So if I presented you with this situation and asked you to multiply these binomials together using FOIL, okay, so you'd probably write FOIL somewhere to keep it straight. And then you start multiplying. So you'd say, all right, first terms, x times x, that's x squared. I'm going to write that underneath. Outer terms, so x times 4, that's 4x. Inner terms, so 3 times x, that's 3x. Then your last terms, 3 times 4, that's 12, right? And then you'd see you're at the point to combine like terms. Notice they're in the center like they always are. So 4x plus 3x, that's 7x. So you say, all right, my answer is x squared plus 7x plus 12, right? We use FOIL to figure out what that product is. Now let's think about how we actually generated these terms that we got. We know that x squared, we got that when we multiplied the first terms together, right? That was our first terms. 4x came about when we multiplied the outer terms together, right? That was our outer. 3x came about from multiplying those inner terms together. And the 12 from multiplying the last terms together. And then when we wrote our final answer, we ended up having to combine the outer and the inner term, or the answer that we got from multiplying the outer and the inner terms. So the first term was still the first term. The second term was from combining the outer with the inner. And then 12 was our last term. Okay? So this was our work, and this was our final answer. Now, what about this? What if I gave you this? Got rid of all that. Even got rid of this. Let's just get rid of that. There we go. Thought I didn't want to cut for a second. Okay, so what if I gave you this? What if I gave you this trinomial? This x squared plus 7x plus 12. And I asked you what were my factors. What did I multiply together to get this trinomial? That is what it means to factor a trinomial. And in this case, the leading coefficient is 1 because the coefficient of this first term is 1. Okay? So I'm going to show you how we work our way through this problem and factor a trinomial. I'm going to use a different example. Okay. I'm going to use x squared plus 7x plus 10 to figure out where or how we can factor this. All right, now to start with, we know that the answer is going to take that format. I'm going to have 2 sets of parentheses, and I know that there's going to be an x in this one and an x in that one. Okay? Now, if you forget, let's flip back. Oop, I erased it. But remember, this started as this. That it always takes like that type of format where the x's are first, right? Okay, let's flip back. Now, what I need to figure out now is what terms are going to finish out these parentheses, okay? So I need to just figure out what 2 numbers will multiply together to give me 10, but when I combine them, I get 7. Now, I'm going to flip back again and show you what I mean by that. Remember when we worked this problem out when it started like this? We said that our last term came from multiplying 3 times 4. And this inner term came about when we multiplied, let's get this work back, that x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 12. That was where this all began. So that last term, like we said, came from multiplying 3 and 4 together. And that 7x came from adding the outer and the inner. So when I'm trying to solve this next problem, I have to figure out what 2 numbers will multiply together to give me the last term, But when I combine them, I get that coefficient of that middle term. Okay? Stay with me. I know it's a little funky at first. Okay, so let's start out by just listing the factors of 10, because I know I need to figure out what numbers are going to multiply to give me 10 at first. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to factor 10. 1 and 10, 2 and 5, and that's it for 10. Now I've handled knowing what numbers have a product of 10. Now I need to decide, out of these pairs of factors, how could I combine either of these pairs to get 7? Okay, so this is what I mean. It's kind of a guess and check. If I combine 1 and 10, well, 1 plus 10, that's 11. So that's not going to give me 7. But 2 plus 5, that will give me 7. So that means to finish out my factors up here, I would need a positive 2 and a positive 5. I have factored this trinomial completely. If I were to multiply this back out, I would get this as my answer. Okay? I'll show you to prove my point. Okay? So those are the factors of that trinomial. So to check your answer, you could multiply that out. So FOIL, x times x, that's x squared. X times 5, that's 5x. 2 times x, that's 2x. 2 times 5, that's 10. Then you're at the point where you combine like terms. You have like terms in the middle there. 5x plus 2x would give you 7x. So x squared plus 7x plus 10. And that is the problem that we started with. So that means we chose our factors correctly. Okay? Let's try another one. Factoring is definitely something you have to do a few times, and then you get the hang of it. I know when I do it, it probably looks easy. That's because I've been doing math for a long time. But I remember when I first learned this, it was a little frustrating for me. But you have to really just keep practicing and make sure you know your multiplication facts, and that'll really help you. It'll really take you a long way with these. Okay? All right, so let's handle this one. We got to factor it. To start with, we know at least it's going to take that format, right? I'm going to have 2 sets of parentheses. And I know that the first term is going to be x, leading coefficient of 1 in this problem, so I can go ahead and write x and x. Now I'm at the point where I need to figure out what 2 numbers would multiply together to give me 6, but when I combine them, I get 5, okay? So let's start out by getting the factors of 6. So I know 1 times 6 is 6, and I know 2 times 3 is 6. And those are all your factors for 6. So now that you have the factors of 6, you know the pairs of numbers that multiply to give you 6. Now you need to figure out which pair could you combine and get 5. Okay? Well, 1 plus 6, that's 7. So that's not it. Now 2 plus 3, that is 5. So those are the pair of factors that you need. So back up in my problem, that means I would need x plus 2, x plus 3. And you're all done. You factored it completely. And if you wanted to check your answer, remember you could FOIL that out and make sure you were right. Okay? Let's try some more. Alrighty, so I need to factor completely. X squared plus 6x plus 8. So I know I have this to start with, and my answer is going to take that format, and I know it's going to have an x and an x out front. Now I'm at the point where I need to figure out what numbers would multiply to give me 8, but when I combine them, I get 6. All right, so let's start out by listing the factors of 8. 1 and 8 would give you 8, and 2 and 4 would give you 8 if you multiplied them, and that's it for 8. Now, out of these pairs of factors, which pair could you combine and get 6? Okay. Well, 1 plus 8, that's 9. So that's not it. But 2 plus 4, that is 6. So that means to finish out my problem, x plus 2, x plus 4. And you're all done. Okay, let's try another one. So I need to factor completely x squared plus 7x plus 12. So to start out, I know my problem is going to take that format. with x's out front. Okay, so now I need to figure out what numbers can I multiply together and get 12, but when I combine them, I get 7. Okay, so let's start by listing the factors of 12. I know 1 times 12 would give me 12, and so would 2 times 6, and so would 3 times 4. All right, so those are my factors for 12. Now, which pairs of these factors would combine to give you 7? That's the next thing to figure out. All right, well, 1 plus 12, that's 13. 2 plus 6, that's 8. And 3 plus 4, that's 7. So that's it. So we need x plus 3, x plus 4. Okay? All right. It is your turn. So go ahead and press pause, take a few minutes, and work your way through these problems. And when you're ready to compare answers with me, go ahead and press play. Okay, ready to check? Let's check. All right. So for the first one, x squared plus 9x plus 20. That factored to x plus 5 times x plus 4. And the second one, x squared plus 6x plus 9. That factored to x plus 3 times x plus 3. Okay? Now, if you need to see how I got those, this is what I did. First, I know I need the pen. I knew that my answer would take this format. And I went ahead and put the x's in there also. Now all I needed to do was figure out what numbers would multiply together to give me 20, but when I combine them, I get 9. Okay? So I'll come off to the side. I know that 1 times 20 is 20. So is 2 times 10. And so is 4 times 5. Okay? Now I need to see which of these would combine to give me 9. Well, 1 plus 20 is 21. 2 plus 10 is 12. 4 plus 5, that is 9. So x plus 4, x plus 5. And I was all done with that one. And remember to check, I will show you on this one. Remember to check, you can multiply your products together and make sure you get the trinomial that you started with. Okay, I'll show you the check. And this is how you can make sure all your answers are right before you check your answers against mine, before you turn in your work in class. This will work for you anytime. You always check your work first. Okay, so if you multiplied that out, that x plus 4 times x plus 5. Okay, so FOIL, right? So x times x, that's x squared. Outer, x times 5, that's 5x. Inner, 4 times x, that's 4x. And then the last, 4 times 5, that's 20. Then you see you've got like terms to combine, right? The 5x and the 4x will give you 9x. And then you've got your x squared plus 9x plus 20. So you can see there, if you've multiplied your factors out, you can check your answer to make sure that you got it right. Okay? Let me show you how I got number 2. So first, remember, always do this first. Do that, write my parentheses in there. And I know that there's an x and an x first in each set. Now I have to figure out what numbers would multiply to give me 9, but combine to give me 6. All right, so I know 1 times 9, and I know 3 times 3. Those are factors for 9. Now I have to figure out which pair of factors combines to give me 6. All right, so 1 plus 9, that's 10. And 3 plus 3, that is 6. So that's how I knew I needed x plus 3 and x plus 3. Okay? All right, so here, you probably noticed that I have a negative sign here. Now your process is the same. I'm going to set up what my answer is going to look like. I'm going to get my factors. I'm going to figure out what's going on. But the negative kind of puts a little spin on things, because now you need to consider that you are working with integers. So you could have positive numbers and negative numbers. But I wanted to start out with just positive numbers first, so you could get a hang of just what the process was. But now that you've got a hang of the process, it's time to step it up a notch. Okay, so I'm going to start out doing this. I know the answer's going to take that format. It's going to have x's first. Now I'm ready to start figuring out what's going on with my actual numbers. I need to figure out what factors or what pairs of numbers would multiply together to give me 15, but when I combine them, I get -8, okay? Now for a second, just ignore the signs for a second. So let's just focus on factoring. Oh, that was a tongue twister. Focus on factoring 15. Okay, so factors of 15. 1 and 15, 3 and 5, right? Okay, so here we go. If you multiply a positive number times a positive number, that's positive, right? But if you multiply a negative number times a negative number, that's also positive, right? That's where those integer operations come in place. So what I mean is, for example, 1 times 15 is 15. -1 times -15 is also 15, okay? So when you multiply numbers together to have the same sign, your answer is always positive. Throw back to pre-algebra on that one. So in this case, what you have to think about is that your product is a positive 15, but the sum that you're reaching for is -8. So the only way that you can multiply numbers together and then take those same two numbers and get a negative answer is if the numbers themselves were negative. So I have to consider -1 and -15 and -3 and -5. Because I know there's no way I can combine a 3 and a 5 and get a positive number. I'm sorry, and get a negative number. There's no way I can combine a +1 and a +15 and get something that's negative. I have to think about the negative cases of these, okay? So for example, -1 plus -15, that's -16. That's not it. Now, -3 plus -5, that is -8. And that's the sum I was looking for. So what that means is, over here in my factors, I'd have x minus 3 and x minus 5, okay? So these ones aren't positive. These factors aren't positive. So when you see negative signs, you just have to start considering negative numbers also when you're kind of doing your guess and check, okay? Let's try another one with those negatives. So x squared minus 9x plus 20, okay? So to start, what I'll always do, get those parentheses up there, have an x in each group. Now I need factors of 20 that would also combine to give me -9, okay? So we can already start to think about this when we start. If we multiplied two numbers together and our answer was positive, the only way that combining those numbers would give us a negative number is if the numbers were negative, okay? Let's get it on the board so you see what I mean. So I'm factoring 20. So I know 1 times 20 is 20. 2 times 10 is 20. 4 times 5 is 20. And that's it for 20. Now, looking at these numbers as all positive, there's no way I could combine them and get negative numbers. 1 plus 20 will never equal a negative number. 2 plus 10 will never equal a negative number. 4 plus 5 will never equal a negative number. And I know I'm trying to get -9. So the only way that this could work out is if both of my factors were negative. Because multiplying these numbers together would still give me positive 20, but now combining them, I would get something that's negative, okay? So let's see. -1 plus -20, that's -21. So that's not it. -2 plus -10, that's -12. So that's not it. -4 plus -5, that's -9. So this is the pair that I want. So I need -4, -5. And that would be my factors. Okay? Let's try some more. Remember I said these, you kind of have to do a few. The more you do them, the more comfortable you'll feel. And then it'll start to just become second nature to you. Okay. So let's start out with what? Right? Putting those parentheses in there. And putting the x in there. Okay. So now I need numbers that will multiply together to give me 4. but when I combine them, I get negative 5. Okay? So let's list the factors of 4. I know 1 times 4 is 4, and I know 2 times 2 is 4. Alrighty? Now, combining two positive numbers is never going to give me a negative number. So I know for this situation, I need to consider negative numbers. Because multiplying two negative numbers together is still positive, and combining two negative numbers is a negative number. So I need to figure out what's going on here. All right, so negative 1 plus negative 4, that is negative 5. It was the first set this time. But you know I have to show you why it's not the second pair. Negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4, and we were trying to get negative 5. That's why it's not that one. So that means for my factors, I'd have x minus 1 and x minus 4. Okay? All right, let's try another one. This one's a little different. We have 2 negative signs this time, but same process. Okay, start out with your parentheses. You know there's going to be an x in there. Okay, so for a minute, ignore the sign, and let's just list our factors for 8. All right, so 1 times 8 is 8, and 2 times 4 is 8. But I need a negative 8, so now you got to think back to multiplication of integers. The only way you can get a negative number for your answer is if you multiply the negative number times a positive number. This is what I mean. 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. Negative 1 times 8 is negative 8. The only way to get a negative number for your answer is if one of your numbers is negative when you're multiplying. So that means that in this situation, because I was trying to get a negative 8 for the product, one of these factors is going to be negative. We have to figure out which factor should it be so that when you combine those, you also get negative 2. Okay? So you got to kind of do a little guess and check. You can use your calculator if you don't like doing mental math. It's fine. Okay, so is there any way you could combine 1 and 8 and get negative 2? Because 1 plus negative 8, that's negative 7. Negative 1 plus 8, that's positive 7. There's no way I can get negative 2 when the numbers I'm working with are a 1 and an 8. And no, that's not it. All right, let's consider the 2 and the 4. Is there any way that you could combine 2 and 4 with one of those being negative and your answer be negative 2? Yes, there is. If the 4 was negative, because 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2. And that's what we were trying to get here for our sum. So that means for my factors, I'd have x plus 2 and x minus 4. Okay, actually I have a positive and a negative. All right, let's do another one. So I'll start by writing out the format of my answer. Now I'm going to ignore the sign for a second, and I know I need to factor 15. So let's get the factors of 15. So 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. Okay, so now is when we consider the signs. We know we have a negative 15. So when we're multiplying, if you get a negative number for your answer, you know that you multiplied a positive and a negative together. So that means as far as my factors go, one of these numbers is going to need to be negative in the pair that I need. I have to figure out which number should be negative. Okay, so let's start thinking our way through this. I need 2x. Is there any way I could combine a 1 and a 15 and get 2? If either one of them was negative. Well, if the 1 was negative, I'd have negative 1 plus 15, and that's 14. So that wouldn't give it to me. And if the 15 was negative, then I'd have 1 plus negative 15, and that's negative 14. That's not what I need either. So it's got to be this pair. I just have to figure out which one of these numbers should be negative. Okay, well, what if the 3 were negative? Then I'd have negative 3 plus 5, which is 2. So that's what I need. I need the 3 to be negative. So I need x minus 3 and x plus 5. And those are the factors that I needed. And remember, you can always multiply your factors together to make sure what you got for your answer is correct. Okay? All right, it is your turn to try. So take a few minutes and factor these problems, and when you're ready to check your answer against mine, go ahead and press play. But remember, you can check your answer before you press play. All right, let's see how you did. For the first one, when I factored that one, my factors were x minus 3 and x minus 4. When I factored the second one, my factors were x plus 4 and x minus 1. And when I factored the third one, my answers were x minus 3 and x plus 2. Okay? All right, I'll show you how I got those. So first thing I did, I wrote down, now I need my pen here. I wrote down the format of my answers, the format of my answer. And then I knew I needed to find numbers that would multiply to give me 12, but combine to give me negative 7. So first, I just start out by just factoring 12. So I know 1 and 12 would give me 12, multiplying. 2 and 6 would, and so would 3 and 4. Okay. So I know that I need a positive 12 for the product. So that means either both of these numbers are positive or both of these numbers are negative as far as when I need to figure out which is the pair that I need. Because that's the only way when you're multiplying to get a positive number for your answer, if you're multiplying two positive numbers or two negative numbers. Now, since the sum I need is a negative 7, it's a negative number, that's telling me that it has to be that these were both negative numbers. Because the only way that the product is positive, but the sum is negative, is if the factors were negative. Okay? So let's see which pair it is that we need. So if it were this first pair, all right, negative 1 plus negative 12, that's negative 13. That's not it. Negative 2 plus negative 6, that's negative 8. So that's not it. Negative 3 plus negative 4, that is negative 7. So that means my factors were x minus 3 and x minus 4. And that's how I got the first one. Okay? Next, so same process. Start out by setting up the format. Now for this one, I need to factor 4. So I know 1 times 4 gives me 4, and so does 2 times 2. Now I consider the signs. It's a negative 4 that I need. So I know that when I'm multiplying, I get a negative number from my answer if I multiply a positive number times a negative number. So that means in this case, my factors are going to have 2 different signs. So I need to figure out which one of these numbers is negative. Because when I combine the numbers, I need to get a positive 3. So then you just start playing around and you see what happens. All right, so with that first set, if the 1 was negative and the 4 was positive, negative 1 plus 4, that's 3. You got that one pretty quickly. So that's the pair that you need. So x minus 1 and x plus 4. Okay? You're all done with that one. And then the last one. So I started out by setting up the answer. Okay? So I know I need to factor 6. So 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Now in this case, it's a negative 6. So I know when I'm finding a product, the only way that my product is negative is if my factors were a positive number and a negative number. So that means that one of these numbers is going to be negative for the pair that I need. I just have to figure out which number is it. Well, you're trying to combine and get a negative 1. Just remember, there's a 1 there you don't see. So you can just start playing around and see which pair is going to give you that negative 1. All right, so with 1 and 6, if the 1 was negative, negative 1 plus 6, that's 5. So that's not it. Now, what if the 6 were negative? 1 plus negative 6, that's negative 5. So that's not it either. All right, now for the second pair, if the 2 were negative, negative 2 plus 3, that's a positive 1, but we need a negative 1. So it's not the 2 that should be negative. It's actually the 3. 2 plus negative 3 is negative 1. So that means your factors, x plus 2, x minus 3. Okay? All right, guys, I hope you're feeling confident about factoring trinomials where the leading coefficient is 1. And I hope you saw how important your multiplication facts and your knowledge of integer operations really help you get through this lesson. Hope to see you back here soon. Bye.